Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Silhouette Sunday video. In today's video, I actually don't have a project to share with you in terms of assembly, but I wanted to show you my method for mass producing or doing mass cuts of the same image. Now, when you're mass producing, there are two ways to look at it. The first method is to fill in all the available space, and this is so you don't waste any material, and that's great for paper. But in terms of using vinyl, be it adhesive vinyl or heat transfer vinyl, I prefer to use the grid method. And what the grid method allows you to do is cut everything out so that it's evenly spaced, so that you can cut a lot out at one time and then cut them apart for storage for later on. And this works out really well if you have a lot of the same item to make, but you want to make it in stages, or if you're going to package your die cuts, for example, vinyl for car decals, or you want to limit the amount of space that your cuts take up in terms of pre-cutting and preparing for selling, for example, on an Etsy store. So if you sell a lot of the same thing over and over again on your Etsy store, you can go ahead and pre-cut in a way where you don't have to worry about the weeding process when you make a sale. You can just go ahead and assemble your final product. So having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So for this project, I'm actually using a school mascot and I'm making cheer bows for some students. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste because I know I actually have the decal that or the image already pre-done. Now, in terms of sizing, the cheer bows that I'm using are 3 inches wide, and I will link to those in the description box down below if you're interested in cheer bows. You can make them yourself, but it's a lot easier just to buy them, if I'm being perfectly honest. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and resize this down to the size I need. So I'm going to click on the transform window, click on scale, and then I'm going to specify the dimensions. Now, this is unlocked. It needs to be locked because I don't want it to lose its aspect ratio. And I'm going to do about 2.1 inches wide. And in terms of size, that'll give me a little bit of breathing room on each side of my bow. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing. And if I were cutting this on paper, I would just go ahead and fill the whole page to minimize space. But because I'm going to have to make a lot of these and I'm going to be doing it in phases, I'm going to make each one of the decals so that it stands alone on its own and it can be weeded on its own later on and cut apart. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a box around the image, and I'm going to make this box actually relatively tight because I don't want to waste a ton of vinyl, but I need it to be its own nice pre-packaged image. And once I have that box drawn, I'm going to go ahead and draw another box around both of them, right click, and then go ahead and hit group. Now, because I'm using heat transfer vinyl in this instance, I need to mirror it or flip it around. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the replicate panel, and I'm going to go ahead and just mirror it. So I have the reverse image, and this is the original, so I can just hit delete and get rid of it. And then I'm going to continue to replicate this. So once I have this image here, I can go ahead and replicate a row of them down. Now you could use the fill page option, but I prefer to actually just replicate. So I'm going to go ahead and replicate them down. And you can see that I have 4 here. So in terms of spacing, in theory, this would work out fine, but I actually want them to have a little bit of space in between so I can cut them apart without actually having to weed them until I'm ready. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this one down just a little bit and draw a box around everything. Go over to my transform panel, and then I'm going to click on spacing so that it spaces all of them equally. So there's just a little bit of space now between each one of them. And now I can continue to replicate. So if I go ahead and I select all of these and make them one group, I can continue to replicate across the page, and I'll repeat the process so that the spacing is even in between each row. So I'm going to go back to this transform window, and I'm going to go ahead and make a row across. And I don't think I can do that again a bunch of times, so I'll just copy this one and then paste it, so that I can get one more row in there. And like I said before, I want a little bit of space between each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out so I can draw a box around all of these again. Select all of these, go to this spacing window, and now I'm going to make the spacing even horizontally. So that now once I have this cut out, each one of these can be their own square, and I could package them up if I was selling them as car decals, or I can go ahead and weed them individually as I make each bow for each season. So having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and send this to Silhouette to cut out, and I'll actually show you a picture of what my final product looks like.